Thank you. I am honored and delighted to be here today, and I thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to come here and hear me speak about the Middle East conflict from my own personal experience. When people hear about the Middle East, they think all the countries in the Middle East are Muslim countries. This was not the case 30 years ago. Lebanon was the only majority Christian country in the Middle East. Lebanon was the most westernized modern country in the Middle East. When we got our independence from France in the early 40s, the majority of the population were Christian. The Muslims were the minority. We prospered, we built the country, we are the descendants of the Phoenicians, we were good in commerce, and in a very short period of time, Lebanon became Paris of the Middle East, the banking capital of the Middle East. We had the best universities in the Middle East, the best education centers, the best schools, the best theaters. We exported the theater and the art to the rest of the Arabic world. That's why a lot of Arabic countries understand the Lebanese dialect through our culture, but while we do not understand many of theirs. We had open borders. We were a very multicultural society. We allowed people to come into our country freely and study in our country. They usually graduated and stayed there because our country offered them the best economic perspective for a job in the Middle East, even though we didn't have any oil. That was Lebanon. The situation began to change gradually as the Muslims started growing and becoming more than 50% of society. We, the Christians, do not multiply as much, while the Muslims, not many, but most of them, a lot of them are allowed to marry up to 4 wives at a time. This is how they multiplied. We started shrinking, they started growing. The most famous Muslim in the world today is Osama bin Laden. Osama bin Laden is 1 out of 53 children. He himself has 27 children. Between father and son, they have produced 80 children. How many people do you know, my dear friends sitting in this room, have produced 80 children? If you're willing to confess. And we're not talking about these other 52 brothers and sisters. This is what tipped the scale in the Middle East over the years. And we always had our problem controlled with the Muslims until the influx of the Palestinians out of Jordan, when King Hussein kicked them out of Jordan in Black September. And actually King Hussein killed more Palestinians in Black September than the State of Israel has killed in all its existence. Lebanon, not surprisingly, being a country based on Judeo-Christian values with open borders and multicultural attitude, took the Palestinians in. We were the only country in the Middle East who took the Palestinians in for the third wave of refugees in 1970. Once they came in, they put their heads together with the radical Islamists in our country and declared holy war on the Christians. Yasser Arafat tried to establish in Lebanon a base from which to attack Israel, something he tried to do in Jordan and failed because of the Jordanian dictatorship by the king. Yet he was able to do it in Lebanon, using our laws, our multiculturalism, our tolerance, and our open-mindedness against us. The problem worsened by 1974. Christians became prisoners to their homes and towns. We stopped traveling. I would ask my parents, how come we're not going to Beirut this year for Christmas? Because the rest of my family lived in Beirut. And my father would give me an excuse, well, we decided to stay home this year. Which wasn't fun for a 10-year-old child. And you have to understand, I'm an only child to my parents. My parents were married for over 20 years. They could not have any children. My mother was 55 years old and my father was 60 when I was born. So staying home with 2 elderly parents on Christmas wasn't that exciting. The reason why we stopped traveling is because the Muslims and the Palestinians would set up checkpoints and would stop cars driving. And they would look at the people's IDs. And in Lebanon, as in throughout the Middle East, our religion is identified on our ID. You are either a Christian,